Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Open Observability Talks. I'm your host, Dotan Horovits, and here at Open Observability Talks, we talk about anything DevOps, observability, and open source. So as I always say, may the open source be with you. We're recording this episode just after FOSDEM, the biggest and most long-standing community-sourced open source conference in the world, I guess. And this year it had a very special fringe event. For the first time, we held OTel Unplugged unconference in Europe. I'm really excited about that. It was held in Brussels the day after FOSDEM, and it brought together maintainers, contributors, governance committee members, end users, with no formal lectures, just discussions in an unconference style. It was a great opportunity to meet the people behind the OTel project, to get updates on the project, roadmap, challenges, and much more. And on this episode, I'd like to share the state of OTel and insights from that special event. So for this episode, I invited Juraci, who was with me at the event and who's a member of the OpenTelemetry's governance committee. So he's definitely an authority to join me on this episode. Hey, Juraci.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great having you here. Definitely one of the prominent figures in Europe around OpenTelemetry. I guess it's such a packed event. You run, maybe for our audience, it was for those who haven't attended these unconference style. So sort of we vote on, people just put post-its, stickers about what they want to talk about. We cluster them, we prioritize, and then you get so these are the topics. There are no formal lectures. And then we run sessions in parallel in multiple rooms. There were 4 sessions in this case. Each one had 8 rooms or so in parallel, sometimes more. So it's packed, and definitely I personally was unable to attend everything. And although there's a brief recap at the end, it's definitely so I need help in covering this great event and digesting the highlights and sharing that with the audience. So thank you very much for joining me and for the insights that you're going to share with us.
It's an absolute pleasure. I enjoyed the event a lot, and I think we ought to do that more. And perhaps as a way to spread the word, today's conversation here is going to be very fun.
Yeah, and it's really a special event, right? Like, how did you feel about the first OTel Unplugged Europe before going into all the techie details?
Yeah, I loved it. I think co-locating with FOSDEM was a good idea. Perhaps one thing is I would perhaps do it before FOSDEM, not after. But I think anyway,
people are not so exhausted.
Exactly. I mean, on a Sunday, I decided not to go to FOSDEM because I was scared of the FOSDEM flu, right? So I said, you know what, let me spare myself a little bit for OTel Unplugged on Monday. But it was a great event. I think the very first OTel Unplugged that we had was in Detroit a few years ago. That was a great event. We had people both from within the community and people from our end user community, right? So people using OpenTelemetry, people curious about OpenTelemetry. So that was a very good, cozy, small event for people to talk to each other and share opinions, share ideas. And we were able to replicate that here in Europe as well. We saw quite a good number of end users, people who are using the things that we are building, and they're very open to talk about it and share their concerns, share their pains, and share their successes, of course, as well. And we had people from vendors, people from just volunteers. It was a great event.
Yeah, for sure. And I still remember, as you said, the one in Detroit. That was, I guess, the one that marked for us that this is the way to go, and this is the way to, I guess, get this discussion going in person. Something that we all do that online on the SIG calls and working groups and all of that. But meeting in person is something that I still feel that is very, very special experience that allows building the bonds and accelerating things that get stuck and so on. So I really liked it. And the fact that specifically in the OpenTelemetry project, we have really what I think is a critical mass of people that are actively very active around the project, whether again maintainers or governance committee members or whichever contributors. But really nice to see the mass we have here in Europe. So having this, for me, it was only natural, I guess. So I'm really happy that it happened, and the success of the event, I think, should pave the path for more to come. So that's at least what I'm trying to advocate for.
Yes.
So,
and I think one thing. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
No, yeah, I was going to say that one thing that I also enjoyed a lot about this event here is we had plenty of time for the hallway track, right? So we didn't pack the event with talks, with pre-canned talks and things like that. It was the opposite. People just picked what they wanted to say, but we also had quite a good time to discuss with people at the hallway as well. And I think this is what made this one here also different. I think the split between have a conversation in the hallway and let's get a room packed with people to discuss a specific topic. That was a very good balance for this event.
Yeah, and this is exactly the things I talked about: building the connections, the ties, and that afterwards you take to the online when we carry on. So I definitely agree with you. And I guess the event started with everyone gathered together before splitting to the sessions with a session by the leads on updates and roadmap. So I guess it's a good place maybe for us to start. And there's quite a bit that's happening on different fronts of the project, and also some of these also fed into the topics that people chose afterwards to devote specific sessions to. But maybe I guess the first one before that is less technical and more substantial is the path to stabilization and the graduation of the project. So OpenTelemetry has been for quite some time the second most active project under the CNCF, second only to Kubernetes itself. So very, very impressive, and definitely, as we all know, and I've been covering that also here on the show many a time, widely adopted and deployed in production environments in multiple use cases. But the technical reality, let's say, or the procedural reality is the project is not defined as a graduated project under the CNCF in the maturity model. And in terms of stability, again, we're behind like the OpenTelemetry collector and other components that people use in production. And the question begs itself, why is that not defined stable formally if it's already production ready? And on the other hand, maybe others that are hesitant to put it in production because of this. So I guess this is a good point to start. And with you being on the governance committee that has the overall end-to-end view of this process and the maturity model and everything, maybe you can share with us where we stand on that.
Yeah. So for quite a long time now, we've been talking about stability and trying to get on the path to graduation. But I think OpenTelemetry is a victim of its success as well. So the thing is, when we started, we grew very fast and we grew a lot. What it means is people realized the value of OpenTelemetry and they started contributing to OpenTelemetry in several ways, in different aspects and different places. So what happens is we have a very good support for a lot of languages. So we have 11 languages last time that I counted. And it's not exactly possible to get all of them into the same state all the time, right? So there are languages that are behind. There are languages that are better than others. There are some challenges as well on the performance aspects. For instance, in Go, we had some troubles in the past, but now since October, I was just measuring this weekend, and the Go SDK is now 80% better according to my numbers, and 88% in some of the other cases. So that's a huge advance since between only 0.4 versions between each other. The same for the collector. So the collector is stable. You mentioned it has been used in production, but at the same time, we have a new release every 2 weeks, and a new release every 2 weeks is for some companies it's a lot. Right, so they have to move to a new version every couple of weeks. And what it means as well is most of them, they decided not to do that. So they move slower. And when they move slower, they suddenly are caught with 20 versions between them and the latest version. So when there is a new update to the collector that they need to consume, or a new CVE, which is rare, we also get, they have to jump 20 versions at a time, right? And that is a recipe for perhaps not for disaster, but this is in 20 versions a lot happens, right? And I think this is one of the tensions that we have in the community. Should we move fast with the collector, or still move fast? Or should we provide a more stable kind of path for them to follow? That answer is very hard to come by. I mean, it is hard to make a decision what is the right solution there. One thing we do know is people are using the collector. It is stable. It is performant. People use that in it is battle tested right now. So I think what is missing is a set of good documents for people to say, this is really stable. This is what you can trust. This is what you can rely on. And this year, you should probably wait a little bit more. And I think this is also a good part of the work that we have on the stabilization front. So let's make a clear cut. Let's document what is expected from OpenTelemetry in terms of stability. And once we have that list, let's check the box and say, this is ready. This is ready. Oh, that part needs some more work. And then we go there, we take a look and we fix it. And then we go back to the original point, which is because we're so big and because people see the value in so many parts, it's also hard to tell people, oh, we should all be going into this direction. And then people say, well, but what about mainframe right there? So I want to work on the mainframe part. And then, oh, I want to work on the MCP part. Like, it is hard to get the whole community to focus on one point. We can try to make that as part of the GC, but it's an open source project after all, right? So there's people work on what is important to them and what they really want to work on. They're volunteers, but I think from inside to the outside, it needs to be clear what people can rely on, what is stable, and have that well documented.
I think another aspect is the guarantee on changes. So while you're not defined stable, it's easier to make breaking changes, which obviously are sometimes unavoidable when you move fast with a young project and new initiatives. I think, on the other hand, it is something that many organizations expect, sort of some sort of a set of guarantees. Same as we've done when we've released, the metrics and the traces, and later the logs as a stable specification, that people know what kinds of backward compatibility you'll have, the things about the dependency management. So dependencies will not change drastically, at least not in minor versions. All these things that we're used to from nothing about open source in general in software, I guess. So can you share a bit maybe about what aspects of stability in that regard people would be able to rely on?
Yeah, so we have some stability policy already been applied at different parts of the project. One of them is the collector. So we have a very well stability process set for the collector, meaning we should not break users from one version to another without telling them that this is changing. So breaking changes, they are typically not allowed. If they happen, it is a bug. So it is treated as a bug. Sometimes we even release a new patch version to address that. But the way that things typically work, again, for the collector, but in other parts of the community as well, is whenever we see that there's a need for a change and that's going to break current users, then we do that in a staged way. Meaning we implement the new feature where the new flag, the new config option, people use that, and then we hide the old behavior behind the feature flag. Eventually, we change the default value with the feature flag so that people can adjust and adopt the new behavior. And then we make the feature flag no op, and then we remove the feature flag, right? So it is staged like in 4 versions. So people have 4 versions or so to make the change. Again, if you're jumping 20 versions at a time, then it doesn't help you. But people we give enough heads up for people. The other thing is, because we take stability also so seriously, things move a little bit slower. And it is the case for some semantic conventions, right? So we have a few semantic conventions that we should have made the cut before or earlier, but we kept an older version alive for longer than usual because we knew that it would break people's dashboards, alerts, and things like that. So breaking semantic conventions is serious business, right? So we try not to do that. It does happen though, especially for the ones that are not marked stable. So if it is marked as stable, you can rely on it's there for a long time. But there are cases where we have non-stable semantic conventions, and we need to move them from one place to another. Again, it's typically done in stages, and people have a very good amount of time to make the change. But the reality is, even though some of the semantic conventions were moved quite some time ago to a specific direction, some of our own SDKs and APIs, they are still using older conventions, right? So we feel the pain ourselves in whenever we break the conventions or whenever we break compatibility. It's a tough problem because on one hand, we need to move fast, and we need to find out what is important to users and what is the right way of doing things. Like, how can we establish the semantic conventions for Gen AI in one sweep, right? So just do it and do it right for the first time, on the first time. Like, it's impossible. We are going to make mistakes, and we are going to make adjustments on the path there. And what it means is people who are building right now tools that uses the Gen AI semantic conventions, and there are tools, they need to adapt and they need to change in the future. And this is a hard problem to solve.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that maybe the maintainers and the GC have been very cautious. Maybe in some places this level of caution was holding us back because the project is moving in so many directions and also in different maturity levels. Obviously, traces have been there for so many years, but profiling is very young. Or in semantic conventions, HTTP has been there for ages, and Gen AI has just joined. So, and if you look at all of that as one monolith, OpenTelemetry, then you'll never be able to stabilize it. We need to recognize that there are different pieces of content, and I guess really nail down what's that scope that defines the stability for that phase one of the, let's say, collector. Realizing that other things, I don't know, that profiling will not be part of the stability. It will join later as a separate thing. So I think this is one of the challenges that we have as a community, is to really scope things very, very clearly, realizing that some pieces are still in motion and are much, much younger and will carry on evolving non-stable in the time being. And by the way, there is another aspect. So we talk about stability, which is sort of, I guess, the equivalence of general availability for commercial software. This is more about the maturity of the software itself. And there's the, I guess, complementary aspect of maturity of the project in the sense of the as an open source project. Which this is something that the CNCF has for all the projects, a unified measure going from sandbox to and all the way to the graduation that we talked about before, to graduated projects. And of course, some of them are even getting deprecated. So I guess the other aspect that people ask in that regard is about the having OpenTelemetry also as a graduated project. In that sense, as you said, very, very active project, second most active, and so many people use it and adopt and adapt it. So it looks like it's a very, very mature project also in that sense. So where are we in actually getting that as a graduated, not incubating, but rather graduated project?
Yeah, this whole work behind the stability is in the context of graduation, right? So we started graduation discussions some time ago. We ran some interviews with end users. We heard some feedback. We heard that OpenTelemetry is complex, is huge, and it's not clear what is stable, what is not stable. So that's the context for. That's also the context for stabilization. It's not only, but it's also part of it. And the moment that we think we have all of the boxes ticked for OpenTelemetry, whenever we say, whenever we have good docs saying this is stable, that part is not stable, then I think we set the context for graduation. So for graduation, we are going to select a few things from OpenTelemetry. So the collector is very likely going to be there. The specifications are going to be there. Some semantic conventions, plus a few APIs and SDKs. Once we set what is the context for graduation, then we go through the process, and then we finish graduation. Discussion is there, right? So the issue is public. People can look into that and see where we are. I think it is realistic to think that I don't know. This is not me now saying with my GC hat on. This is me with my personal cap, basically saying I think that we can get it done by Salt Lake City, right? So by KubeCon Salt Lake City. That's my hope. That's my wish. That's my yeah. But if it's, I mean, we're not hurrying things up for graduation. I think it is important to say that graduation is not the goal. It is the recognition of the current stage. I think we are at the stage where we could deserve already a like the stamp of graduation, but I do realize that there are docs that are missing, and we need to fill the gaps with the docs. There are things that we need to fix in the perception of users and performance as well. Why not? Like, we need to have the numbers to show we can do X, Y, and Z, and have that as part of the graduation process.
Yeah, that makes sense. And on the other hand, obviously, it'd be amazing news for KubeCon North America. This is the jacket, the maintainer's jacket from the other KubeCon. We'll have to have new jackets now with the graduation on it. So be a cool excuse. And you mentioned the end users. I think the end users were definitely a prominent part, or the experience of end users in the
Yes.
in the subjects that were chosen for the sessions. I personally, for example, suggested the topic of how to get end users more involved and more engaged, and luckily this was chosen, and it was a very interesting discussion. And another one was about actually the new initiative with blueprints that again is aimed at making end users start easier and understanding how, because it's such a complex project, maybe sort of tuning in and explaining how, in the context of specific blueprints and specific use cases, you apply OpenTelemetry, whether Kubernetes, cloud native, containerized, or even traditional use cases over VMs or maybe even mainframes, wherever the demand is, and when it's not clear and the documentation seems overwhelming because it tries to be all-encompassing, maybe a blueprint. So I at least found this initiative to be very, very interesting, and in capturing sort of these best practices and making them more accessible. Do you have any views on this, on the end user side and the blueprints and all that?
Oh, absolutely. So I hope that it's okay to mention that I have also a side project called Telemetry Drops, where every Friday or every couple of Fridays I bring some content about OpenTelemetry. And a few weeks ago, I had a conversation just before FOSDEM, actually. So the Friday before FOSDEM, I had a conversation with Dan Blanco. So Dan is the author of the Blueprints proposal, and he was explaining blueprints to me on a live stream. And what I find very interesting is we can get blueprints, or we can get from people who've done it before, what is a recipe for success for some specific situations. I think it is a very cool idea. I think we are at the stage where now it makes sense. So blueprints, a few years ago, it would probably not be successful because it would not be stable enough. Now we are. Now we have a lot of use cases, a lot of people using OpenTelemetry in production in different ways, mixing and matching different components. And I think now it is time for us to show what are the recipes for success, what are the things that work, and what are the things that don't work. You mentioned end users, and I think one thing that I heard last week is OpenTelemetry is the best thing that happened in the observability industry like ever. This is what I heard from an end user, like almost those exact words. And his point was, we now have a choice of where to get logged in. basically, right? So we send data to different backends. We don't have to change things at the instrumentation side. And we always hear bad things about OTel. I think this is what we are, how we can grow. But it's also very nice to hear when things work. And things do work more often than not. We do have some paper cuts as well. Like we have a few places where we have to get to improve. And since I started my company last year, OllyGarden, I've been trying to get ideas, or not ideas, but I'm trying to get to understand what are the problems that people have and how can we solve that at OllyGarden. One of the things that we heard was the collector support, like the stability of the collector. This is one of the things that we keep hearing over and over. So how can I get a supported collector, or how can I run the collector for years, like Debian stable distribution, right? So how can I use it for a decade without having to care about moving configurations or changing my dashboards? I just want to apply the security patches. This is one of the things that we are doing at OllyGarden to fill this gap, right? But this is a need that we hear people having. They either use things from specific vendors, or they tie their collection layer with the backends, or they use upstream. Like there is almost no other solution. I also helped organize OTel Night here in Berlin, and we had one in November. And back then in November, one of the people presenting there, he said basically, OpenTelemetry is only open when your agents or your collectors are not tied to the backend. Like if your collectors are tied to a specific backend, it's not OpenTelemetry anymore. It's just telemetry. And I think so. It's probably a little bit. Perhaps it's. I don't fully agree, like not 100%, but 85% I agree with that statement, right? So if you are tied,
can you give example where you see these patterns of or anti-patterns, depending on who you ask, about OTel agents or SDKs that are on the other hand tightly coupled?
So I mean more the agents here would be the collectors, right? So collector agents and collector gateways. On the SDKs, I think we are quite fine. People are not using proprietary SDKs, even the ones wrapped with, not OTel wrapped in proprietary layers. I think we are fine. I'm not seeing that much. What I do see though is on the collection layer, like with OpenTelemetry collectors, people have to pick between upstream collector, so that's the one that moves every couple of weeks a new version, versus backend supported collectors, right? So you use a specific backend, you use your I don't know if we can name names here, but you have a specific backend, and then you have to use the collector from that backend to receive support from them. If you have your own components, you have to have your own distribution of the collector, then you don't have support, right? So there's no providers out there that can give you support for that. And what it also means is, if I decide to move from one backend to another, like from one vendor to another, I have to change my whole collection layer. So this is lock-in. This is one of the things that we try to change with OpenTelemetry, is to reduce that kind of lock-in. And if you're locked at your collection layer, then it's better than being locked at the instrumentation side, but it's also not the perfect solution either.
Yeah, it's definitely not what we intended when we created the OTel collector, and what you're talking about is really a way to step back in a way that what we tried to solve with the traditional APM vendors is now coming back, reiterated by just taking specific versions of the OTel collector, but then packaging that as their own distro with their own, I guess, secret sauce. But that also secret sauce, as powerful as that may be in augmenting data and enriching the data and whatnot, but then it's becoming again sort of in a way the same pains that we had with proprietary agents that locked us vertically. So
exactly,
I think it's a valid point, definitely.
Yeah, I think this is one of the things that we're trying to address at OllyGarden, that we are providing a collector that people can rely on, that they can get support for months and years. without having to worry about how fast upstream is, and still being able to build their own distributions with their own collector components and so on. But the other thing that we are hearing from people out there, from end users, is that the quality of the telemetry that they have is bad. Like, of course, again, I'm biased. I feel like I'm in that meme from Buzz Lightyear. Everywhere that I look at, I see bad telemetry. Like bad telemetry everywhere. So that's me. And I hear people complaining about the costs, and people complaining it is hard to manage the volume of telemetry and so on. But I think one problem that we have in the libraries that we have is we are collecting too much telemetry, right? So, and it's kind of by design, actually, right? So if we go back to the open tracing days, I remember we had a sticker, and that said basically something like, I instrument all the things. And that was our utopic view to the future. Like, if we have all the software well instrumented, everything instrumented, then we would be able to understand what everything is happening, like everything that is happening within our whole stack, from the browser to the kernel. Like, that's the dream, right? But I think right now we can see that at some point in this trajectory, we are doing too much. Like, we are collecting way more than what is actually useful. We have some best practices. Let's collect X, Y, and Z, and that's it. So we don't have every function call being instrumented. This is anti-pattern. But when we look at eBPF instrumentation, or most of it, we see those bad patterns there, like functions, function calls, or every system call being instrumented and being reported as part of a trace. This is not the point, right? This is bad telemetry. This is too much telemetry. Or when we look at some instrumentation libraries, agents on instrumentation side, being too eager to capture the URL query parameters, and this is bad as well, because when you get a callback from an OAuth server, from an IGP server, you get an OAuth token in the query string, and that token ends up at your telemetry backend. This is not good. This is bad telemetry.
Yeah, actually, it was funny because on the OTel Unplugged, when there was the everyone converged together, one of the topics that someone said, maybe we need sort of levels of tracing now, same as we have with logs, like having, like, you have debug and info, so maybe something equivalent for traces, because traces are becoming so noisy. And I think it also relates to a discussion that took place about OTel and Prometheus. That was a very heated discussion. Many people posted about it on the topics that they raised. So it was nice to see also many post-its all converging around this topic. And one of the places that at least I saw the tension is like the verbosity, like the gap between the maybe more compact conventions that the Prometheus community has adopted versus more verbose one that OTel. And that was just one of the places where this tension arose. So I'm curious, maybe if we shift to this Prometheus and OTel discussion, what were your takeaways from that discussion? And the
so I was
not
part of that. Yeah, I was not part of that specifically. I think I was on another session during that time. But I do see a lot of movement going from a lot of potential collaboration between Prometheus and OTel. I think we have to also recognize that it's not a perfect fit, right? So OpenTelemetry has a philosophy, Prometheus has a different philosophy. We have to interoperate. We have to work together. This is clear to everyone, but it also has to be clear that there are differences, philosophical differences, and we have to respect them. When we store data in a time series database, we have to be careful about cardinality. On the other hand, OpenTelemetry was made with cardinality in mind. So we have so many layers where we can put metadata, that we can put attributes, that and each individual combination of that is potentially a new time series when we convert to time series databases. But there are not only time series databases out there. There are other types of databases that can handle that kind of chronology just fine, right? So perhaps they are not as efficient stores as time series databases for instant queries and things like that, but they are capable databases as well. So I think there's no. I think this is one of the things that come up often during the discussions. It's not. It doesn't have to be 100%. It has to be useful to our end users, and it's also what are the things that OpenTelemetry excel, and what are the things that Prometheus excel, and what are the options, what are the trade-offs, what are the things. Like one thing that I heard during OTel Unplugged is the ability to get or convert current Prometheus exporters into OpenTelemetry receivers, so they are kind of equivalent, right? In philosophy,
they're equivalent, but in terms of maturity, Prometheus community has already accumulated thousands of exporters, whereas the OpenTelemetry receivers is much far behind or younger, if you will. And the question is whether do you re-implement now all the support for all the platforms and open source projects and whatnot out there. And to add on top of that, specifically in the Kubernetes ecosystem, I think Prometheus is pretty much a de facto way of for Kubernetes and Kubernetes related elements to emit their telemetry. So if OpenTelemetry aims first and foremost to be, maybe not foremost, but first to support the cloud native ecosystem, then there is something. So just again, add beyond the technicalities that you mentioned, also the adoption and the maturity aspect.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I would probably say that from those thousands that you mentioned, only hundreds perhaps are really stable. A lot of them work or used to work at specific versions. And what I hear from people is at some point, some of them, they don't work anymore, right? And so I would not count on thousands. I would count on high hundreds, and that's already more than what we have in the collector. So this is a valid point. But I think we have also to define what is then compatibility between those. Like, is it enough to scrape those Prometheus metrics from those exporters and send them as they are to a backend? Or should we take into account that OpenTelemetry has a different naming scheme, different naming practices, and different semantic conventions? Like, it's not enough, in my view, it's not enough to just scrape the metrics, convert them to OTLP, and send to a backend. It is OpenTelemetry in some layer, like OTLP is OpenTelemetry, but when you look into the package, when you open the box and you look inside, it doesn't feel like OpenTelemetry. So is that the right approach? I don't have the answer. It might be, or it might not be. I don't know. What I know is when you convert data from one format to another, and you send to a Prometheus backend, it often fails because during this conversion, something went missing, some prefix, some suffix, some attribute went missing, and then it doesn't feel like Prometheus anymore, even though it was Prometheus at the origin, right? So are we actually solving the problem here, or are we just duct taping things with different layers? Of course, the ideal road would be, yes, everything is OpenTelemetry. Everything has a very nice, well-named metric following our schemes, like domain, a metric name, and then some details separated by dots. And then units are properly placed within the OTLP unit field. A lot of metadata about the process and so on. But this is not what Prometheus is. So this is, I think, the point where we have to respect the differences, right? So, of course, we can scrape metrics with the Prometheus receiver. We can convert them into OTLP and send to a columnar store. But if we are then sending data to a Prometheus storage somewhere,
yeah, it makes sense. And another topic that I felt that was very much of interest to the community there was the no-code instrumentation, OBI, eBPF, and also the new OTel injector. Again, many post-its were about that, and nice to see the cluster there around that. So, and it was an interesting discussion. I covered OBI here on the show, and the new SIG about that, and the contribution made by Grafana Labs for that to that end, and based on the Bela code. So it was Mario was with me. It was a very nice episode. So for those who haven't listened to it, I think you can definitely catch up on that. But I did want to actually put a spotlight on something that maybe many are not yet familiar with, which is the OTel Injector. And maybe many questions that I've seen last week were about how it relates to also to the OTel operator and to OBI and all of that. So I'd be happy to have you maybe introduce a bit of that to us.
Yeah, I think so. This is one of the things where OTel can get complicated, but then we create new tools around it to make it easier. And suddenly we have another project there, which is one more project for people to learn. And I think this is Injector is one of them, and I think it is a nice project. I think it is. So the main goal for Injector is show me your application and I instrument it for you using the best practice, right? So this is perhaps the elevator pitch for the Injector. The idea is you load as a LG preload library for your process, and then it kind of recognizes what is the technology behind it, and then makes a good decision about what to instrument and which other OTel projects to use to instrument your application. So Injector injects the auto instrumentation libraries for your application at runtime. I think it is one of the things that we need at this stage, and it's good that we have it now, not 2 years ago, because now we have such a good set of auto instrumentation tools that we can leverage for within the Injector. It kind of overlaps a little bit with the way that we do things at the operator. So within OpenTelemetry operator, we can tag things and we can say, well, within this namespace or within this specific deployment, I have a Java application and instrument with a Java agent, for instance. And Injector, it automates a lot of that, right? So the next step would be to get Injector integrated into the operator so that those decisions are made in a better way, faster perhaps, and more accurate, and with more technologies behind. So we can then look at, oh, this is Ruby. So what are the best practices in instrumenting Ruby? So I think this is a good way to go there to get applications that are not.
I saw Java, .NET, Node.js, .NET, and Python. Maybe we can update on that. So maybe I'm out of date.
No, I just use as an example, like what are the best practices? I don't know, but people who are behind the Injector can then leverage that knowledge and automate that knowledge for people who are using the technology. Right. So
and by the way, just to update the folks, so there are already like official RPM and Debian packages that contain the Injector and with the auto instrumentation for the respective languages. Again, the one that I saw in the documentation were about Java, Node.js, .NET, and Python. But again, it's a fast-moving project. Maybe it's updated since. So, and I will share the link to the project on the show notes. So look it up. And another interesting one, and we talked before about the semantic conventions and the bad telemetry and so on. I think in that regard, it's also interesting to talk about the OTel Weaver and the sort of the observability by design approach that
Yes.
I guess gives sort of a frame to put things in order. Do you want to say a word about that?
Yeah, so we had a conversation last Friday with Josh Sureth as part of the telemetry drops as well, or perhaps not last Friday, because I think this episode goes in a couple of weeks' time. But we had a conversation with Josh Sureth on Weaver, and it was a very interesting conversation because Weaver is also a lot of things at once. But I think the main idea of Weaver is Weaver helps teams take control of the governance of their telemetry. So teams can define rules for their telemetry, and they can then use Weaver tools to make it easier for developers to use the right terminology, the right internal semantic conventions from their companies. It makes it easier for platform engineers or observability engineers to enforce those rules and to see when things go go awry, go different than what is planned. Right? So Weaver is a set of tools for that specific area. It is very much connected to the idea of bad telemetry, but not necessarily and not only. Right? So it is really about the governance of telemetry, and a lot of bad telemetry comes from bad governance as well. Of course, it doesn't solve all of the problems within bad telemetry, but it goes a long way.
Yeah, and so definitely an interesting project. Again, the link for that also share, but and maybe worth its own episode later down the road. But definitely want people to highlight, to know that it exists and to look into it, especially large organizations, platform engineering teams in large enterprises that have their own internal semantic conventions that maybe expand on the generic OTel SemConv, and want to find a way to formalize that and to populate that throughout the organization in a consistent manner, transparent manner. I think this is a very, very good step in the right direction. Another thing that I wanted to spend some time with you is an initiative, an open source initiative that you lead as part of the OllyGarden group as well, which is sort of Instrumentation Score. You released an open source, open specification around that that helps us understand what the quality of our instrumentation is. Do you want to introduce Instrumentation Score?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about Instrumentation Score as well. So Instrumentation Score is a project that we launched in June last year. And by June, we had already 5 months of OllyGarden. So we started OllyGarden in January 1st last year, so 2025. And we were receiving, after a few months, we were receiving telemetry already from a few users, early users. And we started seeing bad telemetry, and we thought this is a problem that is bigger than us. Like, it is bigger than OllyGarden. It is a problem that exists across the whole industry. So, and we have opinions, but how can we help people understand whether those opinions are good opinions or bad opinions, right? So it becomes a trusting issue. So what I did was, so instead of launching Instrumentation Score as an OllyGarden only project, or like OllyGarden Score was one of the ideas that we had, and we thought like, no, it has to be Instrumentation Score. It cannot be OllyGarden. So I pinged a few people. One of them was Dan. So we talked about Dan before here, Blueprints, Dan Blanco. And I said, Dan, we have this idea about Instrumentation Score where we can come up with rules about what is good and what is bad instrumentation. No tooling, like we just ideas, what is good and what is bad. No, not tied to specific tools, not tied about possibilities, what is possible, what is not possible, or how to solve them. Let's just have an opinion about what is bad telemetry. And let's make a score so that people can then see and rate themselves. Oh, I'm here, I'm there. This is good, this is bad. This service here needs more attention. That other one doesn't need any more attention. Or this one here is really bad, but it's not critical for me, so I'm not going to pay attention to this. But that one is very important to me, and I can see that there is something happening there, and I need to fix the issue. So this is the main idea behind Instrumentation Score. It is a project that not only by Juraci or Dan, but we also have other people in the industry. So people from Dash Zero, people from Grafana, people from Datadog, people from New Relic, so Dan in that case, and of course OllyGarden, and other companies. And we are there helping people understand what is bad telemetry. And we have rules. So we have a specification telling people how to calculate their score, but also we have individual rules. And rules could be, you should not have a high cardinality span name, right? So whenever you are browsing your span names on a drop-down box, you should not see thousands of options. You should see like a small set of options. The spans themselves, they can be high cardinality in terms of the attributes they have, but not the name. Or perhaps for metrics, it isn't bad to have a high cardinality for metrics. Or perhaps you have attributes in the resource attributes for metrics that you don't need, so you should just ditch them. Like I can give examples, but anyway, so those rules, they are all there defined as part of the Instrumentation Score. It
And what's
relates
the
to
way? So
Weaver.
how do people use that? How do they consume? Just if I'm now a user of OpenTelemetry, just to put it in practice, what will I do next after the episode?
So a few people are using that to feed their coding agents and say like, based on those rules here, what are the things that I'm violating as part of my code? Other people in the community, they are building their own parsers of instrumentation score. So they receive telemetry and then they can spit out what is the instrumentation score for the service that you are receiving data from. Of course, at OllyGarden, we also have an implementation there. So if you sign up for OllyGarden, even the free plan, we calculate the instrumentation score for all of the services that you have. But the way it really is an independent of tooling, right? So we don't have an implementation there right now, especially because we don't want to tell people how to solve things at places where OpenTelemetry is unknown. Like OpenTelemetry is not a database, so we should not be having an opinion about how to solve that as a database, right? So that's why it's a little bit complicated to do it like one tool for instrumentation score. A lot of those things, they can be fixed with or detected and fixed with Weaver, right? So you can create the rules using Rego rules or Rego syntax for Weaver that detects and can tell you when those bad telemetry situations happen. I think this is going to be the next step for instrumentation score, but I'm swamped. I don't have time to work on that right now.
Yeah, and again, we'll share the link to the project on GitHub. It's a fascinating project to check out. I want to go quickly over a few other notable things about the roadmap. So one of them was interesting, and actually I am less familiar with that because I'm a backend guy, but browser and mobile observability, it was definitely highlighted on the OTel roadmap. Can you share with us where that's done?
Yeah, so browser was rebooted a couple of times by now, but I think we are now moving in the right direction there. I think splitting the JS into like the JS backend parts from the JS browser parts. I think that's a good move. On the mobile part, we have a new push, especially with the new seek now for Kotlin, focus more on the Android side of things. So I think the next frontier for OpenTelemetry is definitely at the client.
Yeah, I had an interesting episode about mobile observability and Android and all that, and it sounded like we were stepping in the right direction. It was, I think, in the last year, so I'm glad to see this thing moving. Also, in terms of the configuration files, everyone likes YAML, right? So YAML coming to OTel. Do you want to share about this for the YAML lovers?
I mean, I am one of them people that are most excited about this one, I think. So I use OTel for Go for more than a year now. I think the very first microservice that I did for OllyGarden had already support for OTel. I mean, I love it. It is a way that we can ditch hundreds of lines of code of SDK initialization for OpenTelemetry by just using that config file. That config file is way easier to reason about and to change from environment to environment. The one thing we have here at OllyGarden for our own services, so this is not selling anything, is really our services, they load the config file and that's it. And that config file specifies where should I send my metrics, traces, and logs, and which attributes to add, and those change by environment. So we untie the configuration of the SDK from the runtime of the SDK, right? So we can have a specific configuration for our telemetry based on the location that it's running. Yeah, I'm excited about OTel.
All good, and definitely a good initiative to look into. Also, in terms of obviously the Linux package management and things that are more systematic, I guess, that enterprise-related organizations might look into when they install things. And also discoverability, like Ecosystem Explorer, the uplifting the docs in general, also as part of going back to the maturization of the project, stabilization, all these initiatives. So I think that was interesting. Anything that you'd like to comment on that part? Sort of less sexy, but I think very, very crucial for the maturity and things that organizations expect in terms of packaging and the bundles and all of that.
Yeah, no, I think it is part of the story for Injector, right? So the moment that you can do a YAML install or DNF install, OpenTelemetry, and get your databases instrumented and get your application servers instrumented, then that's a good step. Yeah, but as you said, it's very important for now that we're going towards this maturity level.
Yeah, and we should mention in that context that people can also build their own bundle of the collector itself. There's the collector builder that they can decide what subset is relevant for them, and that makes it very easy to sort of build this flavor of the collector. So for those who are interested and are not aware, this is another thing that is, I think, in the same realms. I want to also mention OTel Unplugged for me was very, very exciting event, and hoping to see that more. But talking about events, more places where we can get together as a community in Europe. There's the KubeCon Europe that is up and coming in April. We're going to, all of us, be together in Amsterdam, going back to Amsterdam for those who were there in the previous KubeCon. And in KubeCon in general, also Observability Day, the co-located event that is one day before the main KubeCon as part of alongside other colos, but this one strictly for observability, something that here in Open Observability talks we've been endorsing and supporting for many times. And Juraci, you're one of the committee members there leading this Observability Day. Do you want to say a word about what's up and coming?
I'm very excited about our next event, our Observability Day in Amsterdam. We have a very nice lineup of talks. We have quite a few things happening. I'm very excited. I'd love to see you all there. And we do have a nice program. We have other events as well. We have, so for those who are in Berlin or close to Berlin, we have an OTel night happening every couple of months. So keep an eye on, go to the Cloud Native Berlin community and then sign up for the community so that you get notified whenever we have new events. For people in São Paulo, for people in Brazil, I'm going to be there beginning of March running Tarde de OpenTelemetry and an OTel afternoon in São Paulo, March 3rd. So if you are there, then more details are coming up soon. But yeah, KubeCons in general.
Yeah, for sure. And then maybe on the observability side, we should also mention Observability Summit. It's coming back to the US this year, 2026. So the first time was last year, 2025, for the first time. Alongside was a lot of the same week as Open Source Summit in North America. One day after, and now it's going to be expanded format, 2 days, May 21st and 22nd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So do check it out on the CNCF's events page. Again, a full event dedicated for observability, the topics we love to talk about here on the show, but meeting people in person. And with that, we're getting to the end of the episode. So I did want to mention maybe one other item related to observability on the breaking news section, and I know it's also close to your heart, Juraci, which is the Jaeger project that just released Jaeger v2.15.0, was officially out just a few days ago. I know, Juraci, you were a member of the committee, the leading Jaeger. Are you familiar with the latest release? Do you want to share about that?
No, I'm not. Jaeger was where we met for the first time, Dotan. So the first contributions that we made together was during the Jaeger days. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So maybe just a quick thing. First of all, maybe breaking changes. So in terms of the storage, it's going to now be strictly enforcing a single store type for trace and metric configuration. So if you are using multiple ones, do revisit your YAML configs to make sure that you adhere to the exactly one backend. And besides that, there are lots of other things. There's the MCP integration, by the way, we didn't mention, but also in OpenTelemetry, MCP was definitely one on the roadmap and in the update. So also on the Jaeger side, model context protocol integration, so that you can add tools such as the get trace topology, get critical path, search traces, the things that you do as a human interacting. Now your AI agents would be able to invoke these tools to leverage that. Also lots of UI enhancements to get things a bit nicer and prettier and more accessible. Trace diffs, dark mode, lots of other things. And we mentioned the storage. So in the backend storage, again, lots of work besides the single storage, but also ClickHouse has been pushing very nicely there as a backend store with new materialized views on the event attribute metadata and lots of other things. Support for Grafana with new official dashboards for the metrics exporter, performance improvements with lazy initializations and many other things. So do check out the latest release. I'll also share the link on the show notes. That's again just noteworthy news from the community on the observability front and the cloud native front. And with that, I'd like to thank you, Juraci, for joining us on this episode and sharing your insights.
Thank you very much for the invitation, Dotan.
Yeah, and of course, thank you all to all our listeners and followers for joining us on this episode. All the episodes, this and the others, are always available on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. So wherever you like to consume, whether video or audio only, you have it here. You can follow us also, the show, on Twitter, on X, on Blue Sky, and LinkedIn, on the different social channels to know what's coming and to carry on the conversation. I'll also share the socials for Juraci, so you can reach out to him after, and it's primarily LinkedIn in Juraci's case, and you can reach out to him, obviously, also on the CNCF Slack. I'm also there, so if you have any feedback for us on this episode or any follow-up questions, happy to engage there. I'm Dotan Horovits, and until next episode, thank you very much for listening, and may the open source be with you.